This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and here today with Sherri Stotler. She's an online business manager that provides virtual assistant, project management, and digital marketing services to entrepreneurs and business owners just like me. She started an Etsy store in 2010. She started a blog in 2014, also just like me, and she started her virtual assistant business in 2015. She's working at home for 8 years, so we got a little bit of a veteran episode today. I'm super excited to get into this with Sherri, and she's also a mom. And so some things we're going to be covering today are mom guilt and then getting started in virtual assisting and of course the Etsy store as well. So many things to get into. Welcome to the show, Sherri.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Caitlin.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm actually pretty impressed with myself that I said, welcome to the show, Sherri, without tripping over my words. Saying that 5 times fast. So you have several online businesses. Let's just kind of get a background into how you got started doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so back in, let's say 2006, I had my first daughter, and I was kind of working in the corporate world as an office manager, purchasing agent, kind of doing a little bit of everything. So that gave me a little bit of background as far as just running the back end of a business, but social media and all of that wasn't really a thing back then. But when my daughter was born, I kind of convinced my boss if he would let me work from home a few days a week using this Go to My PC app. So I would log in from home and kind of get my work done a few days a week. And I still felt though, like didn't really want to be taking my daughter to a babysitter or daycare or anything. And it was really hard to just manage everything. And my second daughter was born less than 2 years later. And at that point in time, I was like, I'm done. So I actually just quit my job, had no job for about 2 years. And then in 2010, I decided to start an Etsy store. So I did that, and it was kind of like farmhouse decor and upcycled vintage items and things like that. But I knew there was a lot more to it. And it was kind of like right when the blogging craze was getting really big. So I had worked on my Etsy store for a while. I started really delving into a lot of business books and seeing like all the different options out there for working from home. And I'm like, okay, there's people doing this, so I can do it. I just got to find out what to do. So then I started a blog, basically teaching people how to save money and make more money from home. So I was basically deciding, well, I'm going to learn about this and I'm going to show others as I'm doing it. Because to me, like the best way to learn something is to teach it. So I was doing that. And then I heard about virtual assisting. And I started out virtual assisting at first, just a very part-time basis with a larger virtual assistant agency. And I did that for about 6 months. And then I realized people were actually doing this on their own. So I decided to kind of launch my own business. And they didn't like that. Even though I was a 1099 contractor, they were like, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that on your own. You're going to have to pick and choose here. And I was really scared because I had been making a decent amount of money at that point, but I knew I could make more, but I really wanted that safety net. And I was afraid to just go all in and be like, okay, I'm totally going to be a business owner now. I'm going to be serious about this. I'm going to make this into a full-time income. And so I did. And I told them, well, I'm sorry, goodbye. And I lost, the clients I had with them. And I just kind of had to start from scratch at that point. But it was literally the best thing that ever happened to me. So I think getting thrown into the water and having to swim was awesome. And it was scary, but it's been wonderful ever since. And I'm just constantly learning new things and trying to apply them the best I can.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about teaching what you know as you go along, it's really what I did back in 2014 as well. Starting Proofread Anywhere, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea that I could even improve as a proofreader until I started teaching, and I put my first ebook out there. People had a whole bunch of questions and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then I'm like, wait a second, they're giving me all this advice. I'm like learning from the people that are paying me. I'm getting this also free advice to improve. And so we all kind of became friends through it. We all kind of won together. And I learned a lot about blogging just by doing it. And I started out thinking, I don't know how to blog. I don't know how to start a website. I don't know what happens when I run out of stuff to blog about. And I had all these stupid things that I was scared of, that eventually you just kind of do it and then you listen to what people are saying, what people are asking. And then from them, you don't have to come up with everything yourself. You can come up with ideas just from talking to people that you're working with, other people in your niche. They're not competitors. I mean, I'm working through editing my book right now. And I was just thinking, we're talking about the scarcity mindset when it comes to finding clients, and I'm writing also about like job security. And people think that leaving their more secure position where somebody else is in charge of finding the clients and somebody else is in charge of paying their paycheck. And the real job security isn't in a job anymore. It's in skills. It's in using skills and then finding people who have problems and just having that power on your own, because it's just an antiquated mindset. I use the word antiquated a lot, but antiquated mindset that having a job with somebody else is more secure because you have that control. You can go out and find clients. You can solve their problems. And then if those clients drop you, you can go find more clients because you know how. And so there's so much power in knowing how to do stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that they just don't know where to start. And so they start with Google. I mean, a lot of people start the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group. If you're listening to this right now and you don't know where to start, well, we've got free access to the Work at Home Summit. You can go to workathomeschool.com/summit and sign up for the summit. And then you can learn about all kinds of stuff. You can learn about starting an Etsy store, just like Sherri did. You can learn about virtual assisting. You can learn about proofreading. You can learn about all these different things, and you can figure out where to start. The important thing is that you actually just start, which is exactly what you did, Sherri.
I was going to say, there's really no excuse now for people not to find the resources, even for free. I mean, I'm a big advocate of taking courses and all of that once you feel comfortable and once you feel like you really need to upskill or you're not finding the support that maybe you need for free. But there's so many ways that you can just jump in and get started by Google or YouTubing something, and people can take charge of their own destiny when you're doing this from home. And if you have an employer, they pretty much own you. They own your schedule. They own your income. They own your life. And I just don't like that. So
yeah, me either. They own you for the best hours of every day. And I had started to resent that a lot when I worked at my old job until August 2011. So we're coming up on the 7-year anniversary of me getting fired from my last job. And I really had started to resent the fact that I was sitting at this desk every day when the sun was shining and I wasn't allowed to leave except for an hour during lunch. And if I dagnabbit stayed longer than an hour, I got in trouble. If I clocked out at 4:59, I got in trouble. If I clocked in at 8:01, I got in trouble. Like they own you. And I wasn't making very much money. And every little bit of extra I got, they treated it like it was this big favor. And I didn't like it. And so, but for so long, I kind of put up with that. I think there's probably a lot of people listening to this podcast right now that are putting up with that right now. And they just don't know that there are any other options. And so that's a big reason that we started this podcast, is so we can hear stories from people who have made it happen. Most of our guests, if you guys are new to the podcast, most of our guests are within the 6 month to 2 year range. And occasionally we do bring on people like Sherri who are a few years ahead, because people who are in that 2, maybe 3 year range are like, okay, what's next for me? And they want to hear from people like Sherri. So we do like to pull in some more veteran stories as well. So let's talk about mom guilt. So we talked about like what you did and all the different things that you started, and moving from working with an agency to working on your own. What was it like in terms of your personal life and transitioning to working for yourself with your kids and everything like that?
It was wonderful. I mean, now we can up and go to the park if we want. I mean, I can turn my phone into a hotspot, take my laptop, or even just half the time work from my phone if I absolutely have to work. Most of the time I don't. I try to schedule my days. So I like to kind of batch everything towards the beginning of the week. And then as the week goes on, I have more and more free time because things tend to creep in, and sometimes you have to redo something, and sometimes, appointments come up, and I just like having that flexibility. And when I first did it, I actually homeschooled my kids for several years, and that would have been impossible if I had another job. They're at school now, but that was really cool. So I could work and then do school with them, and then we would have free time and we could do whatever. We could travel. We didn't have to worry about everyone else's schedule. It was just really refreshing to have that freedom to know that we could do what other people couldn't. Even going shopping during the middle of the day was...
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I can't stand going shopping on weekends anymore. I'm like, oh, how do people do this? There's so many people here. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, before that though, you had kids in childcare. So in terms of, you felt that mom guilt, you're like, there is another way. Tell me a little bit about that. What it was like before you started working from home.
Right. Well, I was thankfully my mother and mother-in-law lived nearby. So they would watch my daughter for several days of the week when I wasn't working from home. But I still felt bad, like having to rush to my mom's house during my lunch break, nurse my daughter, go back to work, missing her. And then when my daughters got a little older, I tried like a daycare preschool thing and it lasted about 5 times. I took them about 5 times and I was like, I can't do this. I don't know. I just felt bad. And I realized that all my money and commuting time was really cutting down on my actual take home pay. I mean, I was spending an extra hour or two in driving them all over the place and just driving to work. And, having to buy lunch sometimes. I mean, I would try to pack, but, let's get real. I was trying to save time too. So I would buy stuff out and then the gas for the car and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting paid 60% less than I'm actually thinking I'm getting paid because I'm spending all this extra time and all this extra money that I wouldn't be if I was at home. So I just finally had it. And like I said, when my second daughter was born, I just quit altogether. Thankfully, we were in a position to do that. My husband works full time and he's got a good job, but I still kind of felt like I needed to do something. I really feel fulfilled by working and having a challenge and learning new things. And I was starting to get okay, I got to do something. And that's when I decided to start the Etsy store. It was some kind of a creative outlet. And I knew I could bring in some money, but I wasn't tied down to any kind of other person's schedule. And I knew I could make as little or as much as I wanted. It all depended on me. So I like that feeling of personal responsibility rather than someone else controlling that.
Yes. And I think there's a lot of people who get scared of the fact that, oh my gosh, wait, if it's up to me. Well, that can't be good, because they don't trust themselves. They don't believe in themselves. They have a mindset that's full of self-doubt. And I think a lot of us have that. I still have that. And sometimes I'm like, oh man, if I'm going to make this happen, I have to do it. Are you serious? Isn't there somebody else who can do it? We like to, I think as humans, we try to shift blame. We try to get other people to take responsibility. But the times in my life that I can think of where I just owned it and I took responsibility and I made things happen, it created so much satisfaction in my life. It was like this wave, this high that nothing else, no drug, no alcohol. I'm in the middle of, I'm 7 days in, a no alcohol experiment just to see what happens. But there's no high that can compare to seeing results because you took ownership of your outcome. And in my mind, I'm like, you're telling me that this is a burden, but reality is you can liberate yourself if you take it upon yourself. Your skills can make all the difference in your life, and how much control we actually have is just powerful when you come to that realization and you take actions and you see the results from those actions. So oh gosh, there's so much there regarding all those hidden costs. You mentioned the things that you realize you're getting paid 60% less. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They're like, oh, I don't want to lose my benefits. I don't want to lose this, but think about all the things that you gain and just the time. Time is way more valuable than money. It is, I think, the only non-renewable resource in the world is time. And we just don't even think about it. We'd rather spend time than we'd rather spend money. People are like, oh, I don't want to pay for this course. I'm sure you have a course. And so you've probably gotten the same thing when people are like, oh, this would save me so much time, but I don't want to spend the money. And so we think of money as being more valuable in time, and it just bites us in the rear end. And I wanted to say a different word than rear end. It just bites us in the rear end really, really quickly. So yeah, just shifting that mindset to valuing our time more than we value our money, because we can always make more money. And when we realize that money is a renewable resource and that there's literally an infinite amount of it in the world, the government continues to print it. And they're artificially, keeping inflation down and all these things. So we might as well take advantage of it and then use our time wisely, invest our time wisely. So actually taking a step back, because we were just talking about the time you now save and you're making more money now. I'm sure people are curious at home about what income you're generating from your streams of revenue.
Right. So my virtual assistant business is bringing in about $5,000 a month, and I have 5 clients. And I probably work about 15 hours for them. So I've been able to create kind of packages to do things so that it's also freeing up my time. Now, when I first started, I kind of, tracked my time and I charged by the hour. And I have 1 or 2 clients that I do that for sometimes, depending. But I realized that if I just made packages and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do every month, or this is what you're going to get every single time, then the faster I got and the better I did it, the more time I had and the more money I made per hour if you broke it down. And my Etsy store and my like affiliate income from my blog and everything, that's about another 500, give or take. Sometimes months are a little higher, sometimes lower, but that's about an average. And then my course, I just released that in April, and I've had a good response to that. That's probably averaging $2,000 a month because I have different other options with the course, like upsells and things like that. So it depends on, what people decide to choose and how many people join. But it's growing and I'm really excited, and it's a lot more passive. I spent a really 6 weeks just delving in and learning how to even make a course and then creating it. And then now it's just, hardly anything. It takes maybe an hour of my time just interacting with the students, and I do some live coaching call type things. But that's great income when you can make it as passive as possible and not kind of work by the clock. If you can figure out a way to offer some kind of service that's a package or a passive type of a thing like you do, it's a lot better and it frees up even more time.
And you can help more people. I think that's probably a big benefit as well. And regarding your virtual assistant business, I know people are curious because they hear virtual assistant and they're like, well, what do you assist with? What kind of tasks do you perform for your clients, Sherri?
Yeah, well, when I first started, it was very basic admin skills. So I hear this a lot from people and see okay, I want to be a virtual assistant, but I only know how to do very basic admin skills and maybe Microsoft Office and email management. Well, that's how I started. And I just learned from there. And one of the great things about virtual assisting is you can really upskill yourself easily, especially if you are doing a good job with the basic stuff and you create this rapport and trust with your client. They'll very often ask you, hey, would you be interested in maybe doing this for me? Or would you take a stab at maybe blogging or doing my social media or something? They realize how valuable you are, even just from the very basic things. If you're on top of your game and everything, and they start giving you other things, and then you're learning as you're going. So I would always say to them when I really didn't know what I was doing, I was honest, and I'd say, well, I don't really know how to do that, but I know I can figure it out. So let me take a stab at it. And I would go and I'd teach myself and I'd do it, and then I'd become fluent at it. And I just kept doing that. So now I do a lot more of higher end things, kind of like sales funnels and digital marketing strategies and website design and SEO and blog management. I still will, do admin work. If they ask me, hey, will you research my next travel destination for me and see what good restaurants are around? I'm up for that. I love doing stuff like that too. So I don't really like to limit myself as far as that goes, especially with my long-term clients. But you really can pretty much start with just very basic skills and learn as you go, and then raise your prices or create packages based on that as you learn more. It's like a free college education, or actually it's a college education that you're getting paid for, which is awesome. So that's kind of how I did it and where I'm at now.
Yeah, and so much depends on attitude. And I can tell that you have a very positive attitude, a very can-do attitude. And I think back to probably my first 2 or 3 virtual assistants that I was working with my first blog, my Proofread Anywhere blog. And I was new at online business, but I was a few steps ahead of the people that I hired. Most of them had been graduates of my proofreading courses, or my course at the time. I have 2 now. I only had 1 back then. And I just noticed what great attitudes they had. They loved helping the students. And so I would bring the people on that expressed interest in helping me. And then because they had such a great attitude, they took whatever I threw at them. They're like, yep, I can learn that. And now somebody that's on my team now, people in the Work at Home Heroes community probably heard about her. Her name's Katie. She is a rock star. She knows how to do so much stuff. And so her rates have gone up. There's so much power in learning. If we put new things into our brain, we can offer more services, solve bigger problems. I'm always saying it's all about making money is all about solving problems. And the bigger problems you solve, the more money you can make. And how do you learn how to solve bigger problems, or how can you solve bigger problems? You have to learn more skills. And so it really is very simple, breaking it down to, hey, if you want to make money, you got to solve problems. And if you want to make more money, you have to solve bigger problems. And you do that by learning skills. So it's quite simple. I think we overcomplicate it sometimes, in that we think we have to have somebody give us a job, or somebody has to teach us step by step or hold our hand. The reality is there's so much out there to help you learn I used Google University a lot, man. I didn't have a lot of resources when I was first starting out, didn't have a lot of financial resources I didn't want to invest. I was so skeptical that it wasn't going to work out, which is a whole other problem in and of itself.
Right.
But I was like, well, if I can learn on Google and just kind of do it haphazardly and it works, great, then maybe I'll make some money and then I'll reinvest. And so that's what I ended up doing was once I got going and started making some money, I reinvested that money into doing it better. And it just kept snowballing from there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I do that now that I feel like I've got a good income coming in and I know I can always produce more on demand if need be, then I'm much more willing now to reinvest into software, tools, courses, everything. And I'm realizing how much time it saves. And I wish I would have done that at the beginning. But of course, you kind of have to learn that lesson.
Yep. Yep. I absolutely learned that lesson. So I'm curious because there's a lot of people that come to me, and I'm sure they come to you as well. And they're like, well, my spouse isn't on board, or, my mother-in-law thinks I'm crazy and there's no way that I could do this because I don't have any support from my family. Did you experience that at all?
No, I'm very blessed and grateful. My husband has always been like, you do whatever you want. And he's like my biggest cheerleader. Same with my family. I'm sure a lot of my extended family, I still have grandparents alive and they just don't get it too much. So I try to explain and they nod and they smile and they say, we're so happy that you like what you're doing. And so a lot of people maybe don't get it, but I've always had people around me who are supportive. And I think that's huge and it helps a lot. But even if I didn't, I feel like now I'm at the point where I would just say, I don't really care. I'll show you. But that takes some time to get to. And it definitely is helpful when you have people who believe in you.
So you have a lot of support from your husband, some people in your family. They didn't really understand what was going on. What advice maybe would you give to somebody who doesn't have the support system within their immediate vicinity, within people that they live with, or people that they see every day? What advice do you have for those people?
I would say join some Facebook groups, some communities like the Work at Home Heroes group, where other people are maybe dealing with the same thing or have been where you've been, and other people who are doing the same thing. So, if you're a virtual assistant, join some virtual assistant groups or Etsy store groups or blogger groups, and go ahead and commiserate with those people because they could probably have a lot better advice. They'll give you support. They'll tell you what to do. And I think surrounding yourself with an online community of people who are doing the same thing is just a really good way to go if you don't have it at home or from your friends.
Finding a community online will open up your world so much. I didn't even know the world exists because I wasn't looking for it. If you go and you insert yourself into different Facebook groups and you see what people are offering and you can listen to podcasts, things like this, meet new people. I mean, all of my podcast guests at the end, I ask how they can contact you. So be brave, be willing to reach out to people that are doing something that you want to do, maybe a few years ahead of you, and find a mentor, make some friends, things like that. Just open up your world. And I like to use the analogy of just getting outside the box, because there are so many people that live inside this box and they don't realize what possibilities exist outside the box, even inside the box, because the box is closed, it's dark, they can't see anything. And so they just don't know what's available to them until they turn on the lights or take their elbows and just like elbow their way, punch through the roof of that box and just get out of the box. And then their whole world just opens up. So I'm curious, Sherri, what's next for you? What are you doing next to grow your business? Or are you happy with where you are? I know you want to grow your blog, you want to grow your course. Give us an idea of what's going to be your future in the next year or two.
Yeah, so I recently also kind of launched a small local digital marketing company where I'm only going to focus on local businesses around me. Most of the stuff that I do is virtual, but I really enjoy also being able to talk to other business owners who are near me and I can see them face to face. So I've kind of got that in the works. I like where my virtual assistant business is right now, but every quarter or so, I kind of give myself a goal and kind of take a look and say, okay, like would I want to maybe take more hours on or another client? And I don't take too many clients on at once because I really like to focus on new ones intensely for about 6 months. So maybe 6 months down the road, I'll think about bringing on another client or two, but I like to give them kind of that all hands on deck at the beginning when there's somewhat of a learning curve and getting to know each other and everything. And I'm going to continue to blog and probably do more Etsy stuff. I mean, the sky's the limit. So I'm sure I'll keep doing stuff and keep growing as time goes on because I don't really like staying the same and I love a good challenge.
Yeah, I mean, mindset is everything. And it actually is a perfect segue into my final question, the question I ask everybody on the podcast, because there's probably people listening to you. They're like, oh, Sherri has kids. Sherri's been doing this for 8 years. She's different. I'm the exception, all these things. I can't get started because Sherri's taking all the clients, all these things that pop into your head of reasons why you can't do the thing that Sherri's already doing, that I'm doing, that dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds, thousands of people in the whole world are doing. We come up with reasons why it won't work instead of figure out reasons to make it work for ourselves. So what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe thinking some of those things, who's just scared to get started because of X, Y, or Z reason?
Yeah, I would say just jump in and start something. I mean, you might not end up doing what you start long term, but it gives you the momentum and it gives you confidence. And even if you fail, and I don't even believe in failure, I just think everything is an experiment. And if something doesn't work, then you're like, okay, that didn't work. What could I do to try something else that would work? Or how can I make this better? And, just doing that and putting yourself out there and being willing to take the risks, and sometimes the pain and sometimes the rejection makes you a better person, and it makes you tougher and more willing to keep trying and keep risking. And, most of the time you will figure out something that works, and be, humble, be willing to serve, be willing to just start and keep a good attitude, keep trying, and know that, the sky's the limit. So just find something that you like and try it. And if it doesn't work out, try something else. I mean, there's a million different possibilities. So there's really no reason not to at least try and at least start some kind of side income or online business or providing services for people or anything like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And really the worst form of self-sabotage that we can do to ourselves is to just let that fear and self-doubt hold us back, because we have these images in our mind of us failing. And so we don't start because we're afraid that's going to happen. Well, guess what? The thing that we're afraid is going to happen hasn't even happened yet, but we're allowing it to hold us back. What would happen if we did that? What would be the worst possible scenario if that worst possible scenario came true? What would happen to us? And we really just kind of look it in the face and say, okay, well, if I tried this, and if I tried to set up an Etsy shop and I didn't like it, I mean, I spent $7,000 in personal training school. I didn't like it. Worst case scenario is I just don't do personal training anymore. It's all an experience. And if I never tried it, I never would have known. I never would have met some of the best friends that I have now. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, there's no possible way to fail unless you just don't start at all. I think that's probably the biggest failure. Or if you give up. A lot of people think they failed or something didn't work. It's because they gave up, or they thought they were going to get results overnight or in a month or 2 months or even a year sometimes. And they think that they failed. And the reality is they just got to keep going, because we look at our schedule of progress it's supposed to happen immediately. And we look at the short term. We say, oh, well, it's been 2 weeks and I'm not making any money. It's not working. It's not working. But if you look at yourself in a year or 2 years down the road, you're going to see that you've made a ton of progress. And I think we expect way too much out of ourselves in just 2 weeks, and we just got to slow down. Sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. I say that all the time. One of my mentors says that all the time. And so I learned it from him. But if we try to just go, and I love your philosophy of just putting all hands on deck with your clients, because I think some people think, oh, you have to make a ton of money, you have to have a ton of clients, but then you spread yourself too thin, and then you bite off more than you can chew, and then that will come and bite you in the rear end. And, it's just the cycle repeats itself. So you've got to slow down to speed up, take your time, learn the skills, and learning really will change everything if you approach it with the correct mindset of, I'm bettering myself. I'm doing this for future me. I'm making an investment in myself and in my future, because the time's going to pass anyway. So if we think about how much time it's going to take to get where we want to be, that time is going to pass anyway. So how much time it's going to take should not be a reason not to start. Well, Sherri, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. And I know that there's going to be people with questions. We're going to tag you in the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group, so you guys can head over to the group and talk to Sherri herself right there on Facebook in the group. We've got links to her websites, including her Etsy shop, right here on the show notes. So if you need to go to my website and workathomeschool.com/podcast and find the links to all of Sherri's stuff. She's got it all. And we also want to give you guys a way to get in touch with her outside of Facebook. So Sherri, where can people reach you?
You can find me at heysherri.com, or you can email me directly at sherri@makingitpaylifestyle.com.
Awesome. Cool. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. Thank you again so much for being on the show, Sherri. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure for me too.
Thanks again for listening, guys. I'd like to invite you to be a part of our Facebook community if you're not a member already. That group is called Work at Home Heroes. There's going to be a link in the show notes to find the group. We'll open up a discussion about this episode, so I hope to see you in there. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.